now. And the first item on what went not so well is up to me for our weekly package retrospective. So it's not really a negative item, but I've been recording all of these user interviews, which is great, but going back and rewatching them and digesting all the information and taking notes and translating it just takes a lot longer than I thought it did. So I've just been spending more time than expected on that, but I've really coming out with some great workflows. I'm just trying to figure out how I can translate that all into a product design. I'm looking forward to sharing this stuff with everybody over the next couple of weeks. So it was kind of a positive, I guess. My second not so well is we tried to finish section 2 for Ruby. I did not get all the way through it. I still have to finish the final section 2 project, but I did. For each homework assignment, I was trying to build 2 examples of it because it usually took me twice to drill in the ideas of what I was learning. So I'm going a little bit slower, but I'm trying to make sure that I reinforce what I learned as I learned, basically. So hopefully I don't get left too far behind the class. Okay. Steve, I think you're next.
Yep. So just a few small things. So I was unable to do the QA testing on staging on my first MR, which was just due to the lack of access for most of the week, but I did get that access and was able to take care of that. So it didn't really have any like major effect other than it was kind of, I was just kind of waiting on it. And then in addition to that, the QA testing process in general kind of like took me by surprise. I don't know if you're familiar with it all, but an issue is automatically created with a list of all of the merge requests that have been merged. And then there's like a 12-hour time period to do all of the testing on staging, and then it gets closed. And anything that got tested, at least from what I understand, gets into the release. Anything that didn't, there'll be another QA issue that opens like 2 days later, and it just like every two or 3 days, they just keep it rolling. And I think that's like, they've also changed it fairly recently with the continuous deployment or continuous delivery. So that kind of just took me by surprise because I was like, I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. So, but yeah. So I was able to get through that. And then the only other thing was I was kind of hoping to get all of my 12.1 issues across the finish line, but one of them is still in review right now. So hopefully that'll get through next week.
Is there anything that we should adapt to for the QA process or that we should be aware of that we can improve next time?
I'm already adding a note here to make sure we're clear with the new peeps that there's this QA process.
Yeah, I think the main thing was it wasn't, at least I didn't see it in the onboarding docs, and it wasn't like it wasn't really like right in the main section of the engineering workflow handbook page. So there are pages that kind of go over it, but I didn't find them on my first week or two kind of going through things. So maybe something needs to be updated with a link, or who knows, I might have just missed it along the way.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. Thanks for that, Steve. Cool.
Is it me next? So yeah, just before I go through my items, I'll just echo that I'm on the same boat as Steve there. I didn't really go through any of the QA process as part of my onboarding either, and I didn't really see any documentation. Like I didn't stumble across it, kind of thing. So yeah, I echo that there probably maybe needs to be some changes there to make sure everyone's aware of that. Okay then, so for my issues. Overall, it's a good week. I've had some issues where I've been trying to get the local like linting tasks and RSpec to run on the Enterprise Edition. I just can't, for some reason, get them to work. They just don't, they just seem to fail halfway through. And I haven't quite figured it out because the Community Edition seems to do both of these absolutely fine on my machine. So I don't know if it's a setup problem on my side. I feel like I just need to do a bit more experimentation with that and trying to figure out what's going wrong there for me.
Nick, sorry, Steve, have you been able to get that working?
Yeah, I might be able to help you out depending on, once I see what's going on and what you're running into. I might be able to help get you figured out there.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're right, mate. I was just going to say we're all pretty new, so, definitely understand that feeling of like, it kind of doesn't work and who do I ask and all that sort of stuff. But definitely reach out to the team on these things, and this is a good forum for that, but you don't need to wait for the retro for this. Check in with Steve, because Steve might have already been through it, and if not, there's the questions channel and the back end. Well, not back end, because you're a front-end engineer, but obviously you've got front-end resources in the front-end team who might be able to help you with that too.
Yeah, I mean, it was just something that I noticed, and like the majority of the changes that I've been doing on the EE edition have been really quite small, so it wasn't like a block-in thing or anything, but it was just sort of like like recently in the last sort of 2 hours or so, it's just been something that's been a bit, because I've been trying to do MRs in the last couple of hours or so. It's just a little bit weird not having them pass locally. It's just, I don't like the idea of just pushing them up and just relying on the pipelines to catch it all. I'd rather sort of work it out locally and be confident that the pipeline's gonna pass okay.
Yeah. All right. So if you don't mind, Steve, if Nick, could you just ping him before you? I know it's kind of the end of your day already, but that'd be probably a first point of call.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let Steve know, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. Next point then is mine as well. So yeah, one of my tickets issues was to look at some HAML files and change navigation, and that's a syntax that I'm not particularly well versed in. So it was a little bit more, I don't know, prickly than I was expecting it to be. Usually these things are relatively easy, so I just need to do a bit more working with that particular template and language, and yeah, I'll pick it up eventually. It's just there's a few things that caught me out. That was it.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. Yeah, I haven't worked with HAML for a while either. Anyway, yeah, for me, didn't really get a chance to get through my Ruby training this week. I feel like I've been pretty busy. But like I said, when we were just sort of chatting, I'm running through that at like 1.75 speed, because it's a lot of it's just reminders for me. So it's pretty quick, but I do think it's a worthwhile investment to make sure I'm going to do a better job with that stuff. So I'm trying to get through that this morning. Trying to find a time to work through container registry direction. And I mean that in terms of finding a meeting time. I'd had a conversation with Stan Hu, and he suggested sort of actually getting everyone together. So, but like Camille, DZ, Stan, myself, Tim, Steve, everyone here, like trying to find a time that works for everyone is tough. And Stan's been here a long time, so him suggesting a synchronous meeting means it's probably worthwhile doing it. So like, it's not just a Band-Aid to find like that time. So it's like, okay, how do I get everyone involved? There's a lot I don't know. For me, it can be a little difficult to want to make decisions when I don't feel like I have enough context and information around things. And so at some level, I'm just really fighting through that still, that feeling of being like, I don't know how this is supposed to work. And then I sort of ask for people's assistance. You look at the handbook, you go through that process of trying to remove the uncertainty, but ultimately it's just stuff I don't know and I'm learning. And learning's fun too, but it can be just a little bit more stressful than is ideal, but it is what it is. I'm not sure what our process is here to have someone work on a proof of concept. This relates back to the container registry direction. Camille had offered to do a POC, and we feel like that's really necessary to work out whether our idea to build our own container registry in Rails with augmentation in Workhorse is going to be viable. And so I don't actually know. And I asked him, and he was like, keep asking me. And I'm like, is that the process? But, I I'm not sure what that process is. I think if our team was more fleshed out and everyone was more experienced, that would be happening here. But it isn't yet, and that just has to wait. And I don't think we have that time to wait, just because we've got priorities and goals and stuff. Yeah, that's it for me.
Maybe that's a question we could ask in that group meeting. Say what has to be true for us to get a POC built? Like, what do we have to do? Does someone have to approve Camille's time? Like, once we have everyone together, I think we can ask that question there.
Yeah, I think that'll certainly come up in that meeting, because it's going to be like, that's the biggest issue that people have raised around doing it that way.
De-risking it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So what went well? I've probably said these throughout the week, but I met with Nick earlier this week, and we went over some of the changes that he was making around the container registry error landing page, and it was really helpful for me to see what he's working on, and then it was fun to sort of work through some iterations on that together, and felt like we came out of in an improved place, which was really fun. The conversation with NPM was really interesting, hearing that they would like to work with us and that they're interested in co-marketing and a partnership, and that all of you want to participate in that conversation as well and help drive sort of the roadmap and what we need, and knowing that we might have a listening ear on the other side is really cool. I hope we can do the same thing with Maven maybe. So I'm going to try following up with them. And the 12.2 milestone grooming and planning was awesome. My first milestone here was 11:11, and it was, or 11:10 rather. It was just me, and it was a little weird to plan it and to follow up on things. And same thing with 11:11. So this is really our first milestone as a team where we all went in and planned it together. We're going to work on it the whole time together. So I've really been enjoying having all of you here. I think Steve, you're up next.
Yep. Yeah, it's got to be nice to not have to be like, who's going to work on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of the week reading through Docker docs and just really kind of reading through the Docker code in GitLab. And so I think I have a much better understanding of how they work together, how Docker registry is working with GitLab, and then where a lot of the obstacles in that forward direction, where those kind of come from, and and why we need to address them. So that's been great. And then secondly, this is kind of like the it was up top, but it's also down here, that my merge request has been in review for a week now. But there's been some really good discussions in there, and I've been learning just a ton about some of the GitLab conventions and just various things that normally I would just kind of breeze through, but they're worth paying attention to when running at scale. So that's been really good.
That's awesome.
Okay, so first one for me then is I demoed to Tim at the beginning of the week, and that was really cool to show off some work that I'd actually done and get some feedback. And I liked the whole part of just thinking how we could make things better, and it was really good for me because I feel that there's a lot of room, especially in this team, to sort of suggest ways of moving forward and having those suggestions taken on board, and how everybody does actually want to push the product forward. So that's really, really cool. Next point is that I managed to get through 2 more tickets that have been assigned to me. So I think that they're pretty much dev complete in the sense that they work on my local machine, and I've met all the success criteria, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm just in the process of preparing the MRs for those, and then we'll just work through the review. And hopefully they should go through fairly okay, because they're sort of very sort of simple front-endy stuff. So it shouldn't hopefully be a long review process.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nick. Okay. I feel like, in spite of the comments earlier, I feel like I'm making good progress with the container registry direction. had a bit of feedback, just saying that it's a really difficult thing to figure out, and there aren't any sort of clear answers from people, or at least there are clear answers, but they're competing clear answers on how we should go forward. So I feel like we're making some pretty good progress on the effort to sort of figure out what the direction's going to be. So that's been awesome. And Stan's been super helpful. Tim Zellman, my director, well, he's interim director above us, he suggested reaching out to Stan, gave him some very high praise. And so when I did that, I was pretty happy with the results. So that's been really awesome. And then I'm definitely feeling a little bit more clear on what I have to do and what's going on these days, notwithstanding my comments about still learning a lot. It's a bit of a combination of all of these things, So, definitely this week has been really good for me, and feeling a little bit more in my groove and what needs to happen. So that's been awesome.
That's awesome. Great. I think that's everything. Thanks, everyone. I guess we will close here. I'll stop recording, and we will talk to you during the week or during the day. And if not, have a great weekend if you want to.
You'd be grown people. You can have a terrible weekend if you'd like.